Hello. I bought an iced tea for 99 cents. But stuff still happened. So what's up? Scheduling. I'm taking a short break. I'm going to be off for 2 weeks after this episode. I'll be back August 18th. August 18th. Anyway, before we just jump into it, we're doing good today, right? We're all feeling good today. We're feeling good. Are you feeling good? Are you feeling good? I said, are you feeling good? We are feeling good. Hold on to that. Stateside. We did it. We outlawed poverty and mental health issues and homelessness. We fixed it. So the United States is very well understood to be a deeply Christian nation. That's what we are. We are fundamentally religious. That's not true. But our politicians are like that. And being the Christians that they are, they love to criminalize the poor. Now, aside, I know that Christian values are not that. The joke is that they're not you get me. So what am I talking about? Well, the president has issued another executive order, this one titled Ending Crime and Disorder on American Streets. All that crime, all that disorder from people existing in a state that I don't want to see. Disorder! Essentially, this is an executive order that clamps down hard on homelessness and drug use in public and sobriety programs and housing assistance programs. It basically pulls back on any kind of homeless assistance. It prioritizes funding to states and cities that are going to eradicate homeless encampments. It pulls money away from housing first programs, which are programs that take people who don't have a home and gives them a home so that they can contribute to society. Instead of doing that, and we'll get to that in a bit, but instead of doing that, it clamps down more on like requirements for sobriety before you can get any kind of aid, and otherwise institutionalize people. It's all about finding and institutionalizing by force. In fact, it goes as far as to give housing and urban development a directive to turn over health information from people who are homeless to the cops. Here is a quote from the executive order, quote, shifting homeless individuals into long-term institutional settings for humane treatment through the appropriate use of civil commitment will restore public order. Surrendering our cities and citizens to disorder and fear is neither compassionate to the homeless nor other citizens. My administration will take a new approach focused on protecting public safety. Couple things. One, not a new approach. You're trying to put homeless people in jail. That's what every Republican does. And most Democrats. Second, housing first programs are overwhelmingly successful. We're talking about it now. It's been a bit. People with no ability to think deeper on literally anything will hear housing first programs and get all butt mad because they're like, well, why are the homeless people getting a free house? I have to pay my mortgage, because the general way this is all phrased is give homes to the homeless, which, yes, do that. But that's not even what housing first programs are. They still have requirements to actually get the house. There's still a waiting period. Sometimes it's immediate, but it's also a housing first program. There are further steps. The idea is that you can't fix a broken dam by just plugging a single crack. You got to take the water out and put it behind a new dam. Wait. All right. Awful metaphor. Trying again. Okay. Different metaphor. You work at the getting your bones broken factory, and your bones are always broken. Every day you go home and every bone in your body is broken, and this makes your life really difficult. So there's an idea that, hey, maybe if we get you in a job that isn't at the breaking all of your bones factory, then you'll be able to heal your bones and move on to do something different that's going to benefit you and the people around you. But like, it's really difficult to start that when you've got only broken bones and nowhere to go because you've got too many broken bones. This is not much better of a metaphor, but it's the best I could do. How about this metaphor? Help the homeless. That's not a metaphor. I want to talk about Baltimore. Because this executive order is just going to do harm to people. It just does the thing that we know doesn't work, which is criminalize being poor. But over in Baltimore, which is a city that has a somewhat international reputation for being dangerous or having a lot of homicide, they've just been enacting social programs since 2022 that has dropped their homicide rate to record lows. Mayor Brandon Scott has been investing in after-school programs and social programs and housing programs and rehabilitation programs and recreational programs, and it has plummeted their violent crime rates. Even the cops, the Baltimore Police Department, are like, this is This is going pretty good. In addition, the investments for all this was just in the millions of dollars, not multiples of billions or trillions. And the Johns Hopkins Institute of Public Health estimates that for every dollar going into these programs, the city is getting back somewhere between $7 and $19. If there was a box where I could put $1 in and get $7 to $19 out, I would like to put dollars in that, but I'll settle for putting dollars elsewhere. It's time for our weekly Epstein. Your Epstein update. It's a new recurring segment of horror. On today's Epstein, we've got a handful of bullet points. Let's see. We got a Gallup poll that shows that Trump is not doing very well among anyone, but especially independents, with how he's handling this whole situation. I mean, Democrats too, but independents is where the swing happened. He's down to a 37% approval rating, which is low. I should note that the Democrats are lower. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson called for an early recess because he didn't want to have to do a vote on releasing the Epstein files. Democrats were pushing for a vote on basically that to happen, and instead of doing that, he went to an early recess. But meanwhile, a subcommittee of the House Oversight Committee has voted to subpoena the Department of Justice over the Epstein files. As all this is going on, Trump maintains his innocence. We had that South Park episode about the Epstein file stuff. And now he's in Scotland, visiting his own golf course in Scotland with our taxes. But hey, a lot of Congress people are about to go back to their home districts, and hopefully we'll be getting another round of wonderful clips from town hall. Make them feel it. Elsewhere, for this section, I'm just going to talk about Gaza, the situation that's going on there right now. I know I've talked about this basically every week for over a year, but it continues to escalate. For months now, Israeli soldiers, with the aid of private U.S. contractors and, of course, U.S. munitions, have been unloading indiscriminately on hungry Palestinians seeking food at designated aid sites. They continuously cite chaos and claim that Hamas is doing something that merits unloading tank rounds on civilians. But the reality is, famine is setting in Gaza. There's already widespread starvation, children dying of hunger. And all of this is done because Israel is intentionally starving them. Now, Israel has started doing a, quote, temporary strategic pause or whatever, where they're going to bring in aid trucks and they're going to claim that they're going to allow humanitarian aid in, but we know that that's not going to matter. We know that there's not going to be enough aid that's going to get there. And we know that it's absolute chaos already. Slightly reducing the amount that you are assaulting them is not going to change anything. But as reporters in Gaza are literally documenting their own starvation, the world is starting to take a little bit more note as to what's exactly going on there. And it's not enough. It's never going to be enough. I'm talking about, like, France is going to recognize Palestine at the UN. That's not enough, but it's something. It'll never be enough unless everyone that's been involved in the ongoing support of this genocide are brought to justice. And I mean everyone. Our politicians continue to gleefully endorse the brutal annihilation of an entire population of people in what is supposed to be one of the most sacred areas to the religion that's supposed to be the dominant religion in this country. But what we can do right now is ensure that the suffering of the people in Gaza does not fall silent outside their borders. Remain loud on their behalf. Never let the politicians live any of this down. And make sure that people in your life know what's happening. These are our tax dollars funding a Holocaust. Free Palestine. No child should be dying of starvation mere miles from opulence. But hey, let's move on. Because, and this is very important, we still have to. Let's talk about that T app. Bring the vibes back up. It's not a good vibe story, but we're going to bring the vibes back up regardless. You may have heard about this app over the past week. This app T. It actually came out in 2023, but it exploded in popularity over the past week or so. The concept is basically, what if women had a place where they can privately discuss dangerous men in the dating scene in their area? Like, okay, I get it. Makes sense. It got hacked. So men got big mad about this app. And by men, I mean like wee little babies. We little babies with wee little baby hearts and who can't control their emotions. They were like, women have a place to talk about me behind my back. Why is that concerning to you? Anyway, it pissed off a bunch of dudes on the internet, and dudes on the internet pissed off at women do dumb things. And so they found a bunch of images that this app had been storing in an unsecured place on the internet. These are images of content from the app, user profiles, user selfies, in some cases identification. And they were storing that in an unsecure location. I say hack, people have been saying hack, headlines have been saying hack. It wasn't really a hack. It was just this app was made by people who had no business making an app. I've seen reports that the app was, quote, vibe coded, but I was not able to independently verify that myself. Vibe coding is essentially letting an AI take the reins and letting it drive an app development process. Instead of following best practice, you're just following the vibes, which is not a good way to make a secure app, especially a secure app that requires people to upload identification and marketed as private. Somewhere along the lines, they had data that found its way into essentially a public file server, and they forgot about it. And they were like, that data was originally secure. Like, that was their response. So look, this is not me victim blaming, but I do want to equip anybody who might feel hurt by this with some general tools to help prevent this from happening in the future. While I understand the desire to have a place that feels like a safe space to be able to help each other out, totally, don't give your personal information to relatively new apps, period. If an app requires identification, like photos of your government IDs, and it's not a bank, make absolutely sure you trust them. Like, genuinely go and read their privacy policy, if you can. If you read words that make you scared, even if you don't understand them, you probably should second guess it, especially, again, if it says that it's supposed to be private and secure. Really, just stay frosty. And like, I think this is an okay idea. Like, the concept of the app, it makes sense, but that's what, like, group chats are for. Because the issue here is a bunch of people trusted a single point of failure, and that single point of failure failed. And in doing so, it just shared a whole bunch of information about women who are specifically trying to avoid dangerous men. So stay frosty. RuneScape players rejoice. We've figured out how to spam high alchemy in real life. What? What, you think I didn't know about Falador? What? You thought I wasn't in with the Lumbee? Anyway, disclaimer. I'm about to talk about a thing that is not peer-reviewed science. This story is about a pre-published paper. It has not been peer-reviewed. It is simply being looked at by various people who find it interesting. Let's get hyped about it anyway, because it's kind of cool. Alchemy, like the actual, like alchemy, like turning like lead to gold, or really like metal to gold, something to gold. Getting all Midas with it. It's a thing that humans have been trying to do for basically ever. It's like the Holy Grail, which is gold. There you go. But a nuclear fusion research company in San Francisco has published a paper from authors that actually have some scientific background about a potential process to do alchemy using nuclear fusion. Now, asterisks. 1, we don't have nuclear fusion energy. We don't have that. Seeing as that's a prerequisite for this proposal for how to do alchemy, it's a bit of a roadblock. It's still very theoretical and pretty abstract, but from what I understand, scientists are kind of vibing with it. They're excited about the idea. I did learn one other thing re alchemy and science. Turns out that researchers at CERN, with the one with the very large Hadron Collider, they also saw alchemy happen. For a tiny fraction of a second, particles in the particle accelerator fucked with their protons and switched their elements, which is rad. Temporary elemental shift. Damn. So I guess we've kind of already done alchemy, but I can't hold a bar of gold, so what's the point? Oh, also, this proposal would make radioactive gold, to be clear. It would apparently have to be safely stored for 13 years before humans could actually use the gold, so. Gaming! Last week, Ozzy Osbourne died, and following that, exactly nobody of any cultural significance died. Only Ozzy Osbourne. And so publisher Double Fine, the producers of the 2009 game Brutal Legend, made their game free for 666 minutes. Brutal Legend is a fever dream of a game that stars Jack Black, and it features Ozzy Osbourne, and it's a lot. Oh, hey, I am a liar. I'm a swindler. I'm a downright fibber. My pants are on fire. One of me only tells the truth, and also I only lie. I've been made a liar because the developers of Hades 2 are doing another patch before it goes to 1.0. It was like 2 weeks ago that I reported that there's not going to be another patch, that the next release of Hades 2 would be 1.0, and I would be happy. But they were like, psych, we're doing one more. All right, last thing for gaming. You probably knew this one was coming. Gaming is entering its prude era, or its always been there and it's just getting worse again. So recently, gaming platforms Steam and Itch both pulled a bunch of adult-themed games from their catalog. They took out a bunch of porn games, basically, and they cited that payment processors were pressuring them to not list adult games and stop selling adult games using those payment processors. So both Steam and Itch were like, the payment processors are telling us that we can't do this thing, so we have to take the games down. So Steam and Itch are pointing to like Visa and MasterCard as the reason that this is happening, right? There's other stuff going on like, Stripe, a very popular payment processor that I believe Itch uses. If you've never heard of Stripe, they just do payment processing. But they are essentially just a company that sits in front of other banking networks and makes it easier to use banking networks. So Stripe will usually get a lot of flack for taking down a business that doesn't conform to their relatively restricted policies, like you can't sell porn. But, disclosure, as a indie game developer and prior employee of Stripe, I actually am aware that they are beholden to the banks. I don't like it either, but they are beholden to the banks. Now, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of reasons to criticize a company like Stripe. There's a massive industry of just payment processor middlemen who just each take a little bit of money off of each transaction and add basically no value to anything. It's very parasitic, and we should just have a standard system for transferring money for free. That is a thing that some countries actually have, but the States just does not, at least not at scale. But the actual people setting this policy are the banking partners. So your Wells Fargo, your Visa, MasterCard, even PayPal. PayPal is technically a bank. And so what happened is like an anti-porn think tank wrote an open letter to all of these payment processor companies. And they were like, these game platforms are selling bad stuff on there. And it's not good. The group is called Collective Shout. And they talk about being against the pornification. It's okay to be sexual. That's what humans are. So this group writes a whole open letter to the heads of a bunch of these payment platforms, and then just days later, no more porn games. If you want to make an impact here, I've linked to the open letter in my newsletter, and it lists out the heads of all the companies they actually reached out to. You can call those companies and lodge a complaint. Be good to the call center people, though. They're not the ones setting the policy. Lightning round. Paramount is finally buying Skydance Media after the FCC approved the merger after Paramount capitulated to Trump. Very fun. Here's the weather. AI startup Humanly is offering an AI-generated video interview system. So you apply for a job, and instead of just not hearing back, you waste your time talking to an AI. In the US, FEMA, our disaster relief organization, is now going to be offering a fund to states to build concentration camps. Apple released betas for the new updates to their operating systems across all their devices, and it makes everything all glassy. And it's weird. It's fine. Some interesting new research showed that developers who were using AI-assistive tooling thought that they were 20% more productive, but actually learned that they were 19% less productive. And finally for today, a 150-year-old company in the UK was brought to its knees and destroyed from a single employee's weak password. That is how a ransomware company got in, destroyed their systems, and ended the company. The person whose password it was has not been informed, because they were like, who wants to be carrying that weight? That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you were going to tell your AI interviewer. My name is Endeavorance. We'll talk again soon. Take care and be well.